Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is our Simple Abundance year, and I am Carolyn Coogan, your guide with Sarah von Breathnach in her book Simple Abundance. We are going through Sarah's 2019 edition of the book this year and learning all about her principles and the thought of living in a simple abundance way. How's it going? Are you having a nice weekend? I hope that you've given some thought to putting together some time for solitude and maybe even sneaking those moments in like Sarah had said to us. Sometimes that's what we have to do. She said to us in today's entry, as we are, quote, opening the door that separates two worlds, that even if we are currently just stealing the moments, like even she says, a quarter hour increments or half an hour, that it's a time to be patient and to don't expect too much, she says. I'll read this paragraph. Begin slowly but resolutely. Take comfort in knowing that even stolen moments of solitude eventually can add up to a lifetime of serenity. Be patient. Don't expect too much too soon, especially when rearranging your schedule means dealing with your family's expectations of what you're supposed to do and when you're supposed to do it. Be patient, okay? And for those days, maybe even today, when you don't have a moment to yourself, take to heart the advice of photographer Minor White, who discovered that, quote, no matter how slow the film, spirit always stands still long enough for the photographer it has chosen. That's pretty interesting if you think about the way that a camera captures an image. And if somebody stands very still, that you'll finally see it. But if they were to go really quickly, it would be all blurred. That's a pretty profound quote. No matter how slow the film, spirit always stands still long enough for the photographer it has chosen. That's pretty neat. All right, so we're talking about making the time for the solitary pursuits, right? Well, what are you going to do during this time? Do you even know what you like to do anymore? I wonder if you've lost touch with that. I have had some trouble with it, and I told you guys that I had to go back in my journal and revisit what I always write at the beginning of the year, my list of simple pleasures and the things that fill my love tank. Very closely similar, those two lists. But in moments when you're just feeling so overwhelmed or down or hopeless, that you just totally have forgotten whatever made you happy ever, right? So here we are. This is the entry that we're going to talk about a lot today, which is discovering what you'd like to do if you ever had the time. Hey, if you already know what you would like to do if you had the time, or maybe you do have the time to do it, that's awesome. Then you don't have to worry. But if we're capturing, Sarah mentions joie de vivre, right? The joy of living, the love of life. The great delight that comes when the pieces of our particular puzzle fit together finally. The heartfelt happiness we derive when something brings us keen pleasure, something uniquely our own. They used to call this magical. They used to call this magical something, a hobby. She's mentioned the word hobby a couple times, and she does later in one of the other entries too. And I have some hobbies, but they definitely involve other people. So I do need to think about having some hobbies that I can do on my own. I suppose my postcard path project is a hobby. And I like to do puzzles. I have some things that I like to do. I have to recapture those things because my hobbies I consider to be more community sort of hobbies. Today, give in to your need for moodling, she calls it. While you're dawdling and puttering, consider what rewarding reveries you've put aside that brought you pleasure in the past. Once you commit to bringing more of a sense of play into your daily round with authentic personal pursuits, life will begin taking on a harmonious lilt. Right? So even if it is only 15 minutes right now, and then maybe next week it's a half an hour, and then you build up, just like somebody who's starting an exercise program, they're not going to go and run a marathon immediately, right? They're going to start, maybe it is 15 minutes, and then it's half an hour, and then eventually they get up to 60 minutes, or maybe they do even more than that. So the next entry, Sarah gets into some specific questions that help. You know, we're doing this excavation of self experiment this year. Well, it's an experience. It's not an experiment. We're definitely doing it, right? It's for sure. Experiment sort of makes it sound like it's a maybe sort of thing. But so in the July 27th entry, it's called Solitary Pleasures. And she says, remember once upon a time when you knew how to play? We're going to take a travel back in time to when you were younger to look for clues. Did you love to play alone when you were 10? What were your favorite extracurricular activities? Nothing that once made us feel happy and fulfilled is ever lost, she tells us. There's a golden thread that runs through each of our lives. Remember the golden thread? We just need to rediscover this thread before the joy of living completely unravels. So the rest of this entry is a lot of questions, which I am going to go through. And what I did and I shared this with my Simple Abundance ladies back in 2018, what I did was I printed them out and I did them in my journal. So it was a journal activity. So I'm going to read them, and hopefully you can pause the video and take notes. And I don't know if I can actually paste them into the box below, so I'm not going to do that because I don't know if I'm going to be copyright infringement. So I will just say them out loud, and you can hopefully do your journal exercises with them. So a lot of these are bringing us back to childhood, like she said. So here we go. What were your favorite delights, pastimes, and creative outlets as a child? What were your favorite childhood games? What were your favorite childhood movies? What were your favorite outdoor activities growing up? List your favorite childhood books. We're going to be doing something with those later in the summer. Did you have a favorite comic strip growing up? If so, what was it? Who were your favorite musical groups or singers growing up? What are the best events, moments that come back to your memory when you think of growing up and becoming an adult? And when I did that one, I sectioned it off into sort of like early childhood, teens, early adulthood, and those are fun. I like thinking like, what are the best events and moments that come back to your memory? What were your favorite toys growing up? What was your idea of a perfect day as a child? What types of days made you most happy and content? I like that one. And there's something immediately that comes to my mind, and it would be in the summer, and it would be being out in the flats with my dad and our dog and clamming. So digging for clams and just spending the whole day out there on the sand and going in the water, not really having a schedule. We always stopped for ice cream on the way home. And then maybe my favorite show was on TV at night. That night, that would be good. What did you want to be as an adult when you were growing up? I actually have a book called My Book About Me. I got it when I was either 6 or 7. And there are a lot of words in there that are spelled wrong, but I filled it out as a kid. And I actually answered that question at the time, so I can revisit that. In high school and college years, what were your favorite extracurricular activities? If you could instantly acquire 3 new skills, what would they be? What 3 outrageous activities might you try if no one knew you did it, or you weren't too afraid to do them or try them? That's a big one. What 3 all-inclusive, fully paid-for trips would you take? And what 3 daring things do you find intriguing, even if you know you'll never do them? We talked about that before, as far as like becoming a figure skater or something like that. So in addition to Sarah's questions, I also wanted to bring in some questions from, I've mentioned Cheryl Richardson before. She has an audio recording called Find Your Passion. And now that I'm saying that, I'm not sure if there's actually a printed book as well, but my memory is it was a presentation that is recorded. And I listened to it also a couple years ago, and I have the questions from that as well. And so for anybody who feels like maybe going back to childhood is not as conducive to this exercise, like say you don't have great childhood memories, then you may resonate more with these more current questions. But I hope maybe you'll do both. I had a happy childhood, so I enjoy going back and thinking about my favorite toys. And you know, in my creative illustrated discovery journal, that I have pictures of my favorite toys in there. Because I have a section of, like a childhood section. And guess what I played with in the bathtub? And why I have them all over my house, I don't know. But I had a whole collection of mermaids in my bathtub. So I might have told you guys that before. I think I did. Okay. So these are Cheryl Richardson's questions from her presentation. If you could only have one section of a bookstore or library that you could visit, what section would it be? When you pick up a newspaper or magazine, what sort of stories are you drawn to? What is the subject matter that would cause you to look at those first? Consider the titles that catch your eye and intrigue you, and any subject areas of focus to those articles that you want to read. It is certainly an eye-opening thing to show you what you're interested in, right, by doing that. Which catalogs do you have a really hard time letting go of, and how come? What is it in those catalogs that you feel most drawn to? I have some catalogs that I love to look through. I don't ever buy anything, but I just like to look through them. And I keep them too. I don't know. It's fun to look through catalogs. Name the first 3 books that come to your mind that strike you as your very favorite books. So that could be any time in your life. It doesn't have to be the childhood books. Name your 3 favorite movies, the first ones that come to your mind immediately. I would have trouble breaking that into 3. I'm sure I answered this question in my journal, but I love movies, so it would be hard for me to come up with just 3. Who in your life do you envy or feel jealous of? Who has a life that you wish you could say was yours, and why? What do they have that you really want, and what do you need to do to start pursuing that for yourself? That's a really good question. Whose life would you love to have? That's basically a very similar question. It could be anyone, someone's life that you have never even met before. But if you could have that 30 days of experience in their life, who would that be? That's really telling, right? If you were allowed to make one positive change in the world, what would it be? It doesn't matter how large or small. What interests, hobbies, or careers would you like to see the young people in your life get involved in? In a way, maybe you want to live vicariously through them, right? Because maybe you always wish that you could do that, or hope that you will someday. I don't know. Recall one time in the last week that you felt strongly about something. As you look at your answers, do you notice any common theme, patterns, or areas of interest? This starts to uncover some things that you need to pay more attention to, that you need to take seriously and follow your passion towards pursuing. As you start to do this, there is a divine power that starts opening doors. Sometimes doors are right in front of you and you aren't walking through them. As you start to notice things that make you feel lit up inside and enthusiastic and inspired, you start to connect more with your authentic self. This is when passion is awakened and things start happening. I thought those questions were a great tie-in to some of these questions that Sarah's having us excavate from our past memories. So at the end of the 27th entry, she says, after asking all those questions. Get the idea? There's a fabulous world out there just waiting to be explored. We simply have to be willing to experiment. A hobby affords us a marvelous opportunity to awaken our natural talents. It does require a little bit of effort, she tells us. First of all, we have to figure out what we'd like to do to shake the doldrums. Then we have to carve out time to do it. By seeking and finding a solitary pleasure that would make you jump out of bed each morning to pursue it is a great way to live. I was thinking about this too because I was talking to my dad, who's in his late 70s now, and he is so happy in his life. When I think about getting older, sometimes I think, like, I hope I'm not that old lady that just, all of her friends have died and she's just miserable, because I've had some relatives that have been in that situation. But I would love to be like my dad in his late 70s, where he is so raring to get up and enjoy the day. And he has so many hobbies. He's writing a new book, or he's painting, or he's out with the dogs. And he just has so many interests. And he's very alive with life. So when she said the thing about finding a pleasure that would make you jump out of bed, I feel like he has so many things. And here we are, like, I'm probably on the end of this, the other end of the spectrum, where I'm trying to remember what I would do if I had the time, and then what would even bring me pleasure right now. But again, that's just maybe like being in the doldrums, like Sarah said. So I'd like to be more like my dad, and I'm glad that he's happy, because I'm sure it's very hard to watch relatives that are older that are not happy. So he's a good teacher for me, to remind me to get up and know that there's fun things to do, and that it should be a happy experience to get out of bed. Not like in that other video where I said sometimes you get up and you're like, ugh. So I hope you got something out of this. I hope you will sit down and do some of the questions, and that you will think about what it is that's going to bring you pleasure, and definitely making that list of at least 10 things that would be solitary pursuits. I have to look through my simple pleasures and love tank list to see what of those things could be considered things that I would do in my solitary hours. Thanks for watching, as always. I hope you'll leave a comment. I love hearing from you guys, and I will see you soon. We'll have more talking about this time for ourselves and what we're gonna do, and thinking about hobbies and other things. Oh, and I have another entry that I'm going to bring in from the old book that didn't make it into her July entries, and I think it's a really good tie-in to figuring out what we're gonna do during this time for ourselves, and bringing that joie de vivre back. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.